What happens when the person who hurt you convinces you that you are the problem? In her book, The Gaslight Effect, a foundational work highly regarded by psychology professionals in the United States, Dr. Robin Stern, Associate Director of the Yale Center for Emotional Intelligence, offers a clear definition of gaslighting. Gaslighting is when someone plants a seed of doubt in your mind, making you believe that what you're feeling is wrong. You begin to question your emotions, your memories, and even your own sense of worth. What makes gaslighting so frightening isn't blatant deceit. It's the subtle, creeping way it distorts the victim's perception piece by piece, until they can no longer tell what's real and what's imagined. According to Dr. Stern, gaslighting doesn't usually start with violence or harsh words. It often begins subtly. A gentle denial, a skeptical frown, a logical sounding but emotionally detached tone. Over time, victims stop trusting their own feelings. They start asking themselves, am I overreacting? Am I just being too sensitive? Did I really remember that wrong? Each time they ask, they take a step further away from their own truth and closer to the emotional prison the manipulator has quietly built. Dr. Stern emphasizes that gaslighting doesn't only occur in romantic or marital relationships. It shows up in families, workplaces, and even friendships. Anytime someone deliberately invalidates your experience, distorts reality, or uses emotional authority to make you doubt yourself, gaslighting is happening. One critical warning Stern gives is this: most victims don't realize they're being manipulated, because when you've been convinced that you're too sensitive or imagining things, you also start to lose the strength to resist. Gaslighting isn't just a psychological trick. It's a form of emotional abuse, subtle but profoundly damaging. And healing only begins when you're brave enough to say, no, my feelings are real, my memories matter, and I deserve to trust myself. Gaslighting is a particularly dangerous form of psychological manipulation, not because it involves direct threats or violence, but because it silently erodes your trust in yourself. The term gaslighting originates from a play, later adapted into the famous film Gaslight, in which a husband deliberately alters small details in their home, like dimming the gas lights, and then denies anything has changed when his wife notices. Over time, she begins to question her own sanity. This behavior has since become symbolic of a common yet difficult to detect pattern in modern relationships: the denial of feelings, the distortion of reality, and the gradual breakdown of someone's ability to trust their memory or reason. A hallmark of gaslighting is deliberate repetition. The manipulator consistently denies events that happened, flips right and wrong, or makes you feel like you're overreacting. At first, it might just feel frustrating, but as it continues, you start to doubt your memory, your emotions, even your personality. A simple phrase like, "you're remembering it wrong," might seem harmless, but when repeated over and over, combined with dismissed evidence, distorted memories, and vague language, it becomes a silent blade cutting into your self-confidence. Gaslighting is not just a disagreement or argument. It's a strategy of control. It systematically denies the reality and emotions of another person, gradually making the victim rely on the manipulator's version of truth. And the scariest part? Victims often don't realize it's happening. They just feel different, weaker, more uncertain, and no longer able to trust their own instincts, memories, or feelings. That's when gaslighting has started to take hold of their mind. 1. Doubting your own memory. One of the first and most visible effects of gaslighting is the erosion of memory. Victims often begin by no longer feeling sure what they saw, heard, or experienced. When someone you trust, a partner, a family member, a co-worker, or a boss, repeatedly tells you that never happened, or you're remembering it wrong, you gradually stop trusting your own memory. At first, you might think, didn't I remember that clearly? But over time, if those denials keep coming, spoken with confidence and certainty, you start to question yourself. What if I really did get it wrong? This isn't ordinary forgetfulness. It's a calculated, repeated distortion meant to break your trust in your own mind. Worse still, this doubt doesn't stay confined to a single event. It spreads like a shadow over your entire past. You begin to question whether the things that once hurt you, made you cry, or seemed deeply meaningful were ever valid at all. You start erasing pieces of your past, memories, words, emotions that once felt vividly real, just because someone told you they weren't important or never happened. And when your memory becomes blurred, it becomes easier for someone else to lead you. Gaslighting doesn't just steal your memories, it steals your ownership of the past. Even worse, when you no longer believe in your own memory, you lose your ability to tell your story. You are robbed of your voice. Doubting your own emotions. A deeper level of gaslighting occurs when the victim not only begins to question their memory, but also their emotions. You felt angry but were told, "You're overreacting." You felt sad but heard, "Why are you crying over nothing?" You felt hurt but they said, "I was just joking, you're too sensitive." When this happens over and over, you stop believing your feelings are valid. You learn to dismiss them, suppress them, just to avoid being labeled as too much or a burden. Eventually, you lose the ability to truly listen to yourself. The most troubling moment comes when you no longer even know what you're feeling. You feel confused, numb, and lost. Moments that should have been met with protection and empathy become opportunities for blame. You end up living in a relationship where you're constantly apologizing for feeling wrong. Over time, emotions stop being your compass. They become something you hide in order to be loved. Gaslighting makes you believe that your sensitivity is what makes you unworthy. But the truth is, your emotions exist for a reason. Feeling sad, angry, or hurt isn't a flaw. It's a sign that you're alive, that you care, that you're human. Someone who truly loves you will care about how you feel. They won't deny it. When gaslighting causes you to doubt your emotions, you don't just lose your inner voice, you lose your right to feel. Doubting your own reason and intuition. Once your memory and emotions have been distorted, gaslighting moves into a deeper stage, making you doubt your own logic and intuition. You might feel that something's not right, but immediately shut yourself down with, "I'm probably just overthinking it." Intuition is your body's natural warning system. When something is off, you feel uneasy, anxious, or unsettled deep inside. But if you're constantly told that you're being negative or overcomplicating things, you'll start silencing those internal alarms. This leaves you vulnerable to even more toxic relationships because you no longer trust your initial instincts. Similarly, your rational thinking, your ability to reason, analyze, and evaluate begins to break down. You may logically understand why a certain behavior is wrong, but that gets dismissed through half-truths, blame shifting, or distraction. The manipulator might make you feel like you're not smart enough or too emotional to see things clearly. And once you believe they're always right and you're always wrong, you hand over your decision-making power, even for the smallest things. Losing your reason and intuition doesn't mean you're not intelligent. It means you've been worn down in an environment that made you believe your intelligence is a problem. You start Googling answers to questions that once felt obvious. You ask friends whether your reaction was normal. You live in constant doubt over every choice you make. That's not caution. It's a survival mechanism shaped by manipulation. Losing your sense of self-worth. The deepest and most devastating wound gaslighting inflicts is a collapse of self-worth. When you no longer trust your memory, your emotions, your reason, or your intuition, what you lose next is yourself. You no longer know who you are. You begin to see yourself as a burden, as someone who's always wrong, someone who's never enough. Any confidence you once had in school, work, friendships, passions fades over time. Every attempt you make to assert yourself is met with denial, criticism, or disappointment. Gaslighting turns you into a distorted version of yourself, and the worst part is you believe that version is real. As a result, you start to accept things you once knew were unacceptable: disrespect, control, coldness, emotional abuse. You convince yourself that it's the price you have to pay to be loved, to keep the relationship, to grow up. But the truth is, you've been robbed of your sense of worth. The cruelty of gaslighting lies in this. It doesn't destroy you with violence. It convinces you to destroy yourself through constant self-doubt. You self-censor. You over-explain. You shrink yourself to fit into someone else's version of who you should be. When someone starts asking, "Am I the problem?" or "Do I even deserve love?" that's when gaslighting has done its worst. It's made you stop believing you're worthy at all. The language of denial and the power of repetition. One of the most recognizable signs of gaslighting is the use of language that denies your emotions and reality, often disguised as concern or delivered with seemingly reasonable logic. Phrases like, "You're being too sensitive," "I don't think it's as serious as you're making out to be," or "You always make a big deal out of everything," might seem harmless if said once. But when they're repeated frequently in different situations, they slowly become tools for distorting your perception. The manipulator isn't just denying the event. They're denying your response to the event. They don't directly say you're wrong. Instead, they make you feel like you are. This leads you to start policing your own emotions, censor yourself to avoid being seen as dramatic, irrational, or too much. Even more concerning is the pattern. Gaslighting doesn't typically happen in explosive waves. It happens in subtle, selective moments that are spaced out just enough to avoid detection. One day, you realize you've grown quieter, you share less, you even apologize for the smallest things, just to avoid conflict or upsetting the other person. If you often feel the need to justify your emotions, or feel like you're not okay but don't know why, that's a warning sign. You may be in the danger zone of psychological manipulation. Gaslighting doesn't always come in the form of heated arguments. It can be disguised as gentle-sounding remarks used repeatedly to deny you bit by bit. The vague, isolating, and disorienting inner fog. Another, deeper and more dangerous manifestation of gaslighting doesn't come through words. It comes through an ongoing sense of vagueness. You start feeling confused after conversations, unable to recall exactly what you did wrong, yet still apologizing, because maybe it really was my fault. Manipulators often use diversion or reversal tactics. When you call out their behavior, they flip the script, making you feel like you're the problem. Too demanding, too emotional, too selfish. For instance, if you say you feel hurt because they didn't keep their promise, they might reply, "You always need to be in control." Or worse, "Nothing I do is ever good enough for you." These reversals distort your ability to tell right from wrong. You begin to see yourself as the source of all conflict. Another sign? Emotional isolation. You start hiding things from friends. Stop opening up, stop reaching out, because you think, maybe I'm overreacting or no one would understand. That's when gaslighting has taken away your inner compass, leaving you directionless inside. You feel utterly alone, unsure of who to trust, including yourself. If someone consistently leaves you feeling confused, guilty, or like you're a worse version of yourself, but you can't point to exactly what went wrong, there's a strong chance you're being gaslit. This form of manipulation doesn't leave bruises on your body, but it leaves deep, invisible cuts on your soul. Wounds you don't even notice until one day you realize you've lost yourself. Awareness is the first step toward protecting yourself. The first step to protecting yourself from gaslighting isn't necessarily walking away. It's becoming aware. You must learn to separate your feelings from someone else's invalidation. That means, if you feel hurt, that feeling is real, and no one has a right to tell you it's not. Start by writing things down. Keep an emotional journal. This isn't just a way to release your thoughts. It becomes tangible proof that helps you recognize patterns of manipulation. When you document specific situations, you begin to clearly see how denial, blame shifting, or guilt tripping are being repeated. Also, talk to trusted people outside the relationship, close friends, family, or support groups, because they're not caught in the manipulative cycle. Their perspectives are often clearer and more objective than your own, especially when you're drowning in doubt. Most importantly, avoid making big decisions while you're emotionally compromised. If you're feeling overwhelmed, conflicted, or confused, don't immediately believe what the other person says about you. Wait until you've calmed down. Then check in with your memory and logic before deciding what to believe. Gaslighting works by disconnecting you from your inner reality. So the most powerful way to guard against it is to stay rooted in yourself. Know who you are, know what you feel, and know that your feelings deserve to be respected. Decisive action and building an inner immune system. Awareness is essential, but decisive action is just as important in protecting yourself from gaslighting. This doesn't mean you have to cut off every relationship immediately. It means setting clear boundaries. If someone consistently invalidates your feelings, say it plainly. I don't feel respected when you tell me I'm being too sensitive. By setting boundaries, you're not only protecting yourself, you're also signaling that you recognize your worth and won't be easily manipulated. If that person genuinely cares, they will adjust their behavior. If not, their true nature will soon become clear. In addition, educate yourself about emotional manipulation, not just through books, but through emotional wellness podcasts, trusted therapists, expert-led platforms, and support communities. The more you understand what gaslighting is and why it happens, the sooner you'll spot red flags in relationships. Most importantly, rebuild trust with yourself. Intuition never lies, but it can go silent if ignored for too long. Start paying attention to those off feelings, those subtle gut reactions, and ask, what is this feeling trying to tell me? Don't dismiss your instincts just because someone called you too sensitive. Sensitivity is not a flaw. It's a refined internal warning system that life has gifted you. Learning to honor. It is one of the most powerful ways to ensure you are never led astray by the hands of manipulation again. Reconnecting with yourself is the path to healing. If you've experienced gaslighting, you don't need to be strong right away. What you do need is a process, a journey back to yourself. This is the most crucial step because gaslighting disconnects you from who you are. It makes you question your memory, your emotions, your thoughts, and even your core values. So healing begins by slowly rebuilding each one of those pieces. Start small. Ask yourself every day, how do I feel today? Where is this feeling coming from? Am I living in alignment with my truth? These aren't lofty questions. They're lifelines. They pull you back to yourself. At the same time, seek out spaces where you are heard without judgment. Therapy groups, safe friendships, or mental health professionals. They can help you see clearly that you are not crazy, not broken. You are someone who was manipulated into silencing your own voice. Another important truth: don't rush to forgive the person who gaslit you, especially if they haven't acknowledged the harm or shown real change. Forgiveness isn't about letting injustice go. It's a process. If you forgive too early, before you regained your strength, you risk falling back into the same cycle of harm. Allow yourself time. Healing is not a one-time decision. It's a journey. And every step you take back toward your inner self is a victory. Trusting your emotions is the foundation of psychological freedom. In the end, the most important truth for anyone who has experienced gaslighting is this: trust your emotions. In a world full of noise, opinions, and other people's judgments, the one thing you can control is your inner world. If you feel hurt, that feeling has a reason. If you feel uneasy, something likely is off. If you feel controlled, listen to that instinct. Trusting your emotions doesn't mean acting on every fleeting feeling. It means honoring them, acknowledging that you have the right to feel and respond. Manipulators will do everything they can to make you doubt your emotions, because once you stop trusting yourself, you become easier to control. But when you pause and listen to your inner voice, you're reclaiming the most powerful thing you own, your emotional autonomy. Remember this: true freedom doesn't come from pleasing others. It comes from knowing who you are, feeling what you feel, and having the courage to live in alignment with that truth. And if there's one message you take with you today, let it be this: you are not wrong. You are not too sensitive. You are simply human. And once you stand with yourself, no one can pull you away from the truth you know in your heart. Gaslighting isn't just a rare storyline in psychological thrillers or courtroom dramas. It's a quiet reality woven into everyday life, where love, family, workplaces, and even close friendships can become the stage for devastating mind games. What makes gaslighting truly terrifying isn't the behavior itself, but the aftermath. When someone causes you, over time, to doubt your memory, your feelings, your logic, and eventually your sense of self-worth, you don't just lose trust in others, you lose trust in yourself. And that is a brutal cost, because self-trust is the root of all healthy relationships, inner freedom, and self-respect. But gaslighting is not a one-way road. The truth is, you can come back. You can learn to recognize manipulation, to see who is dimming your inner light, and more importantly, to ignite it again from within. Every journal entry you write, every time you say, "My feelings are valid," every step you take away from denial is a step back home to yourself. Healing doesn't come from revenge or proving someone wrong. It comes from no longer needing anyone's permission to believe that you matter. The deepest lesson of gaslighting isn't identifying the manipulator. It's learning how not to abandon yourself, even when you've been manipulated. In a world where people often say, "Don't be so sensitive," your sensitivity is not a flaw. It's a gift, a trustworthy inner compass. Hold on to it. Listen to it. Let it lead you back to where you belong. A life where you are respected, heard, and allowed to be fully yourself, without permission and without apology. Have you ever experienced gaslighting? Have you ever doubted your own feelings just because someone kept telling you, "You're too sensitive"? The answer is yes, you're not alone. Drop a comment below and share your story. We read every single one and deeply honor the courage it takes to speak your truth. If this video meant something to you, please hit like, share it with someone who needs to hear this, and subscribe to the channel so you never miss another healing message. And don't forget to tap the notification bell so that whenever you need support, we'll be right here. Thank you for watching all the way through. In a world that sometimes makes you question yourself, your presence here, your willingness to listen, and your choice to still believe in your truth is truly something precious.